Hello there. I'm Casey. I'm going to be your therapist today. So today for our session, I just want you to be completely open and honest about your thoughts and feelings with whatever you may share. So I want to start by asking what brings you in here today?
So I just wanted to talk about an experience I've had this past summer. It brings me some anxiety, and I just thought you could help me talk through my thoughts and let me know what to improve on.
Okay. Could you elaborate on the story?
So it was this past summer at the end of May. My family and I went on this vacation in North Captiva, which is on the west side of Florida. It's just an island, so we had to take a ferry over, and we spent a week there with some family friends. And we got there, and then we decided one night we were going to go jet skiing. So we all went jet skiing, and then you had to be 18 at least to ride your own jet ski. So my sister was still young at the time, so she wouldn't be able to get on her own. So she was on the back of mine. And then my dad had one, and then our family friends were all separated because they were older. And we started heading over to the place, and then we were signing the papers and stuff. And we got on the jet skis, and then we had the instructors kind of go over what was expected, safety procedures and stuff like that. And then we went out, and we were just kind of taking our time getting out there. And I was more towards the back because I felt like nervous when I was driving out. It was kind of like an uncomfortable feeling, like of uncertainty, like what was going to happen, because I've never been on a jet ski or like done anything on water like that. So my sister was on the back of mine, and then we all kind of followed each other out in the line, and there was another instructor like in the back, and he was telling me to speed up because I guess I was just going too slow. He said it's easier if you go faster. So then I started to speed up, and it was uncomfortable, and I felt like kind of anxious. And my sister kept saying to me, she was like, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm fine. Like, it's just driving a jet ski. It's not like anything crazy." And she was like, "I just have this feeling like something bad's going to happen." So then I was a little concerned because I was like, all right, I don't want her to feel uncomfortable, like driving with me. Mm-hmm. So then we headed out, and she ended up eventually asking to get off of mine and going on like my dad's or someone else's just to feel safer, I guess, just because I was kind of going slow and like looked nervous, so I didn't want her to feel uncomfortable. So then my dad like kind of drove up like next to us, and then we could just like tread in the water, like it was fine to do that. So then she just had to jump in the water, swim over, like climb up on his. And then I was by myself, and we all had like life jackets, so like everything was like safe and like whatever. And then they ended up driving away, and also my boyfriend was there, and then we had our family friends too, and they were all on their own. So we were driving around, maybe just like kind of going in circles. We had like a boundary, like an area that was like boundaries where we could go. So then I started going a little bit, and I was kind of going slower, and then I sped up some just to try to make myself more comfortable with it, but it still felt like awkward. But I continued to just drive around and like get the feel of it. And then at this one point, I took a little break. It was only about 15 minutes in. And then I was kind of just treading water. So then my boyfriend like drove up next to me, but still like a few feet apart. And he was treading there too. And then we were just talking. And then my one family friend, he was more reckless. And he was driving around like full speed, just doing like donuts, craziness. And then he ended up trying to show off because he's like that type. So I guess he stopped looking, and he called Kevin's name, my boyfriend, and he was like, "Watch this" or whatever, and then was going, and I guess he lost control. So then he ended up coming around, and if I was floating like this, he like hit the front of it. So then he hit my jet ski like at full speed, and I was just floating there. So it was like a hard impact. And then I ended up flying over the handlebars. So like my pelvic area got stuck on the handlebars, and my legs like flipped over my head. Mm-hmm. And then The jet ski was obviously really damaged, and then I was floating there in the water, and my jet ski, I looked over and it was just like kind of smoking, and then it ended up sinking in the ocean. And the instructors were there, and I guess they're prepared for these situations, so they had they had water ambulances there that they could have called. But my dad is a cop and has been a firefighter, so he was kind of familiar with like the medical field and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And he ended up knowing like what to do in the situation. So I was floating there, and I was kind of in shock because I couldn't really like feel anything, because it was just like what just happened, like really traumatic. And then my sister ended up coming over with my dad, and then she jumped in the water and then was kind of helping me, and I saw blood, but I didn't really know where it was coming from. So I was like, oh my gosh, like what's happening? And then I guess from being in shock, like my legs went numb from being flipped over the handlebar. And then, so for a second, I literally got so scared I thought I was paralyzed. And then I was like, what am I going to do? So I was just floating there, like not even moving, trying to tread water or swim or anything. And then my sister jumped in, Kevin jumped in, and they kind of like helped me up onto my dad's, but it was hard because I was like barely swimming. I just remember floating there and like looking up the clouds, and I was like, am I going to die right now? It was actually terrifying. And so then my sister swam under the water and put her head under my legs and kind of boosted me up. And then like our other family friends were like helping me up, and like they were over there panicking because they were the ones who hit me. So it was kind of like, was he okay? Was I okay? Like it was a mess. And then, so I eventually got up on my dad's jet ski, and I remember driving back, and my arm was just like hanging there. And I remember just seeing blood gushing down my arm. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, I don't know what happened. Like, I could barely even see it because it was on like the outer side of my elbow.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was driving back. My dad was kind of like calming me down, talking about what happened and everything. And then we got back, and there was already an ambulance like on the dock. Like I guess they called medical, like whatever, just to be ready. And my mom didn't go, so she was like near the restaurant that was on the dock with it too, because it was like a restaurant and like activities like skiing or jet skiing and stuff like that. So she was there, and she was pretty frantic and going insane. And obviously, because she was scared, she didn't know what happened. Like there was an ambulance, and we were the only group out there. It's like they take one group at a time because they only have like 10 jet skis, so it's not like a bunch of random people. It was just us, so they knew it had to be someone in our family. And then I came back with my dad, and like he was like awesome, like talking me through everything, like making me feel better, but I was just still in shock. Like I could literally barely feel my legs, and when I got off, I was kind of like limping because it like pulled my pelvic out of place, so I could barely walk. And then they ended up like carrying me to the ambulance. My mom's like freaking out, but they're trying to keep her like back just because they need to like check up on me.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got to the ambulance, and they put me in there, and there was, I think, like 2 paramedics in there, and they were just checking on me, like taking my blood pressure, making sure I was okay, kind of covering my elbow because they didn't know how deep the cut was. But that was the only like physical damage they saw. Like they were surprised that it wasn't anything worse just because like the impact was so heavy.
Mm-hmm.
And so then we ended up going to like the nearest little like medical center that they had there, because we ended up being on like an island, so it was kind of like their first resort, like the only option they had. And we went there, and then everyone met us there, but they had to keep my family friend back because they had to do all the paperwork, because obviously like they could involve lawsuits, but it was like optional because we were like family.
Mm-hmm.
But they would have to pay for the damage because it was a whole jet ski that sunk, and the other one was like really messed up on the like in the front of it. So then we got to the hospital, and I went in, and I was like just in a bathing suit. So I remember I was just freezing, and then my arm was bleeding, and I was like, what am I going to do? So then I got checked up, and they treated my elbow. They ended up giving me like 10 stitches in it, and then just like cleaned it out and stuff like that. And then they had to like move my pelvic back into place, and like it like popped, and it was very uncomfortable. Anyway, So then my mom was in there, my sister was in there, and then Kevin and my dad were in there, and the rest of them were kind of just waiting in the waiting room because they didn't know what happened. And luckily, they said I got very lucky because it was like a high speed hit, but very like minimal damage. Like I only just cut my elbow open, and there's like a sac in your elbow that they said it could have like ruptured and like done something to and like really messed my arm up, but it didn't. It was like just right over it, so it wasn't that deep. And then they just kind of gave me stitches, wrapped my arm, put in like a little like they couldn't do a cast because it was on the joint, so they kind of just wrapped it up. And then like I couldn't physically bend my arm for about a week after, so I kind of felt like I was doing like physical therapy type movements because I had to like every day I had to practice like squeezing my hand and like bending my arm to like a certain level. Mm-hmm. But like I went for like a week where like I couldn't shower by myself, I couldn't get dressed by myself because I literally could not bend this arm at all. And we ended up going back. And obviously there was some tension between our families because of the whole money part of it. But they ended up feeling really bad. So then I was like, no, it's okay. Like things happen. But we just kind of went on with our vacation. I ended up going parasailing the next day, so it wasn't that bad. It wasn't like my arm was broken or anything, but they said I got really lucky. So I feel like that just, whenever I see like big bodies of like water, like oceans, and like go to the beach and stuff, and just jet skiing is like common everywhere, so you see it all the time. I feel like I just get really anxious, and I'm trying to like overcome it. Because obviously, like, we live in Florida, so, like, we're always at the beach. And, like, even vacations, like, it would be something – I don't know if I could try it again. I don't know if I would want to, but, like, I know other people are eventually going to want to. And, like, I have so much time ahead of me, like, things could change. But I feel like I'm just really anxious when I see water, and I'm not really sure what I should do to, like, make it, like, not as bad.
Okay.
That's basically the summary.
Okay. So I want to touch on the fact you said before you guys went out on the jet skis that you guys went through all the safety and like training protocol or whatever with the instructors. But when you guys started going out on the jet skis, you felt a little bit uneasy. How do you feel about what they were teaching you on the training and safety aspect of it? Do you feel that was the reason why you felt like underprepared and uneasy because it was a new thing for you, it was a new experience?
Well, I mean, they did like a fine job explaining it. They went over all the safety procedures. We had to like sign this paper before that. Obviously, it's like a thing that could cause injury or whatever. So we had to sign that and like be a certain age. So I knew what I was stepping into. Like it was more at risk, like something like skydiving or like skiing, like you never know what can happen. Mm-hmm. It's like you have to sign stuff. So I feel like they did prepare me well. I just feel like it was one of those things where like I felt like fearful, and I was trying to just be like, okay, I'm fine. Like it's just something new. I'm just uncomfortable with it more than like I didn't feel prepared and I was like, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But I felt like I was pretty prepared. It was just like an uncomfortable experience, and I just tried to keep going and say, oh, I'm fine.
Okay. So was anyone in your family aware of at the time when you guys were out in the water and kind of like driving around, like clearly they were aware you were behind them and whatnot, and you said there was an instructor behind you. Was there anybody like willing to kind of settle your nerves a bit I know your sister had gotten off and gone with your dad, but was there anybody else that was willing to kind of like join you or even possibly have you join them to kind of settle those nerves?
I mean, no, I feel like that definitely would have made a difference. I easily could have said, hey, can I go on somebody else's jet ski? But I think just because there wasn't enough people, like they couldn't just leave it like floating there in the water. Mm-hmm. I mean, I never know, like they could have. But yeah. I wasn't thinking about it at the time because I was like, I feel like I would be more scared if I was on the back of someone else's and didn't have control more than like having my own control and being by myself, because then I was like, all right, I could float here, I could go slow, take my time, and everybody else was just ripping it, going crazy. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, I feel like I felt more comfortable being on mine, as comfortable as I could feel, but I didn't think about doing that. But I guess their job was more take them out, make sure they know how to work everything more than like, because we knew what we were stepping into. So we knew like how we felt about it, and like we practiced doing a little bit before we went all the way out to the ocean. So, yeah.
So you also mentioned something about, your thoughts immediately after your cousin had hit into your jet ski, how you were more of in shock, obviously, from the impact, but more of just like, you're scared of kind of like what the physical damage was and kind of like the physical harm it inflicted on you. Of course, being there in the water, it was kind of difficult because you couldn't really assess anything that had really happened. Could you elaborate more after the fact, after you went to the hospital, once you got treated, and kind of went through the recovery with your stitches? Could you elaborate more on like your thoughts post jet ski accident?
Well, I was scared after just because I didn't know if it could impact my arm in the long run, just playing lacrosse and stuff like that. That's the first thing I thought of, because obviously like it's a sport where you use your arms like mainly. So that's what I thought of first. And then it kind of comforted me that they were saying, oh, it didn't hit like there's like the sac or whatever in your elbow. They were like, it didn't hit that, so that's good. So that made me feel better. But I knew right away that I was going to be like anxious about water and like ever doing that again, just because it was the most like near death experience I've ever been in. So it kind of like brings me back. Every time I see water, I get kind of anxious.
So being down here in Florida, and kind of course, being near the beach and, going on your beach trips or whatever, and being in that environment where, you're with your friends, or whether it's just you and a friend or whoever, and you're taking these trips over to the beach, what is it that kind of goes through your head? Is it more just the fear of, like, is it flashbacks from that accident? Is it just like you don't really know what's going to happen the second you go into the water? Is it the beach and its environment itself? What kind of goes through your head in environments now where you're at the beach?
Yeah, I feel like it's mostly like the flashback part of it. Like as soon as I see one, that's the first thing I think of. When like other people see it and they're like, oh my gosh, let's go jet skiing. And like everyone obviously like right now, like our age is going to want to do things like that, like go jet skiing, whatever. So when they say that, I'm like, oh my gosh, like that makes me anxious. So, but I feel like it definitely is flashbacks more than like, I'm not scared to go in the water. Like obviously I'm fine to do that, but I feel like it's more like every time I see it, I think about it. Even when they just like come near me or like we're in the water and I see them, just get really anxious and like my heart starts racing, and then I'm just like, oh my gosh, like I know nothing's gonna happen to me that moment because I'm not on it, but I just have flashbacks, and then I think about what happened, and I'm just like, I think about how that could happen to like so many other people, and most people don't realize that because they just want to like go fast on it and like, but like it's just one of those moments where you think about how they aren't thinking like you are, and they don't know like what they do know what could happen, but they're not thinking about it. But that's all I think about when I see them now. So I think that's why it triggers like the anxiety.
Okay. So when you're there, is it just when you're at the beach with those flashbacks, when you're in that environment, I know it just triggers those flashbacks and kind of those feelings. Clearly you're okay to at least just go into the water. Could you see yourself in the future possibly getting back on a jet ski, even if it's with, like a friend or unaccompanied? Yeah.
I feel like when you said the whole like unaccompanied, I feel like that could definitely be a factor in it. Like if I just went out with like one other person and was either like on their jet ski with them, or it was just like us like riding around, it could be different. I feel like the whole big group, and like if I went with like a bunch of like random like college friends, it would be different because everyone would be, going fast and stuff. But I feel like it could be different if, say, like me and my dad just went out on one. it's definitely a fear I want to overcome just because it's something like I want to do in the future again, but I just don't feel comfortable enough to do it like anytime soon, but I want to.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of where I'm stuck because I want to overcome it, and I don't know if I should like try to or if it's not that big of a deal.
Okay. So I see there's like, clearly there's a willingness. You want to go back, you want to try it out again.
Yeah.
You know, maybe not with the same people you were with the first time.
Yeah.
But obviously there is a willingness. You want to try it again. You know it's a fun experience when it's done right. And clearly, like, your dad may be the one to help you, who knows your mom, whoever it is. So I think moving forward, a good way for us to kind of conquer this and overcome this anxiety and this fear of not only like those flashbacks of what happened in the ocean, not only of what happened when you were on the jet skis, but I think a good way of moving forward for you is to start kind of reassessing. And I find that is clearly you've taken the steps. You're fine just going in the water, you know, enjoying the beach, enjoying, you know, the ocean and whatnot. Moving forward, though, it's possible if you were to expose yourself a little bit at a time, possibly. Like you were saying about, you know, you'd feel comfortable going out with your dad. Maybe, you know, trying to talk to him, you know, about that possibility. Maybe the next time you guys go on a vacation, with trying to take it easy, like little steps at a time. I think that's a good way for you to kind of expose yourself to that situation and kind of coming face to face with that fear and that exact moment and that experience that you went through. But yeah, I think overall, like, the anxiety and fear you feel is justified. It was a very traumatic event for you. But moving forward, if this is something that you want to overcome, then I feel the best way would be to expose yourself. But yeah, moving forward, your thoughts and feelings, they're valid. That's how you feel about the situation. Like I said, it was clearly very traumatic. But yeah, I think moving forward, I think we'll be moving in the right direction. So, thank you. Yeah. Okay, I don't know. Let's talk about this.
I know.
Oh, we're good.
Okay.
That was 22 minutes.
All right. Now we're gonna switch.
Yeah.
You guys did it.
We did it.
We're still
Oh
recording.
my God, I said it too.
All right.
Do we want to switch spots
I messed
so he
up.
knows?
Yes.
No, you're fine.
Let's
We're
switch.
just gonna keep one.
No, we're just switching.
We're just keeping one
So it has to
recording,
be like a continuous video.
even if we're separate responsibilities.
All right. So we don't already have like 22 minutes done.
Mhm.
Anyway. Bye, Sierra.
Bye, C.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yes. Now, I am going to be Casey's therapist. Hello, Casey.
Hi.
How are you today?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm good. Just wanted to know what brought you in here. How are you feeling? Talk about your thoughts, feelings, if I could help you with anything.
So I actually wanted to talk about my kind of like the journey I went through to kind of getting to where I am at today with school. Because in the present right now, I've been feeling like very overwhelmed with just, you know, stress with, you know, responsibilities, and just like anxiety, you know, with testing and all that, and kind of like a little bit of like homesickness. You know, I'm from Maryland, so being all the way down here in Florida, and it kind of takes a toll a little bit when I'm not with my family for different events. But I feel like this kind of all started and began, you know, I play lacrosse here at St. Leo, and I think that all kind of started in my like recruiting journey. I was like the first one in my family to leave Maryland and kind of like go away and actually be like a student athlete away from home. I have 3 older sisters, and the 2 oldest stayed local at home. They played volleyball there. But when I went on this journey, it was already a big sense of like overwhelming, like in my head, because my sisters had never gone through the process of, going on visits and going to camps and doing all these things in order to get a scholarship. And that was just like a big weight, I think, on my shoulders, because I didn't have anyone to go off of. I didn't have anyone to like kind of like learn from. So it was kind of just like self-learning. Like I had to teach myself throughout the way. I reached out to like coaches for my club team and all that. But when I got to the point of like, you have to do the visits, you got to start meeting these coaches, you got to start like getting in contact with them. It kind of relieved a little bit of stress off me, because once I did, it was like, this is all for the big main picture. And I started going on visits, and, my mom and I, for the most part, like drove everywhere. For the most part, we stayed on like the East Coast. And although I was really eager to like go on these visits and whatnot, it was still like a big question I had of like, first of all, like, where am I going to end up? And two, like, what division do I even want to go in? And when I went on these visits, I just had a feeling that like those answers were kind of going to be, or those questions were going to be answered along the way. And when I went on my first visits, I started all the way up north with my mom. We drove all the way up north, I think as north as like New Hampshire or something. And for the most part, we hit every state coming down into the South. And the more I went up north, I think the more I realized like that wasn't a place that I was going to fit in. And that was once again, like another concern of mine. Like, am I going to have that feeling everybody talks about with, when you go on a visit, you're just going to know. And every time we would go somewhere up north of Maryland, I just kept getting this feeling like, I don't belong here. I don't fit in with the people around here. I don't like the weather around here. And all that. The teams, the coaches, for the most part, they were great. But I just couldn't see myself, up north and kind of fitting into that environment. So when we started moving and doing visits down south, that's when I kind of started feeling like more at home, which was like a good part, because I wasn't looking at any schools in Maryland. And I knew for a fact that I was going to be leaving my family. I just didn't know how far, what state, where I was going to be. And when I did, we kept going down south, and I liked it because like the people were polite. It was just like, it was somewhere that like matched like my personality and like what I'm used to from like back at home. And the more we kept going down south, I still had tournaments and stuff going on. And we actually had a tournament down here in Florida, and it was called the President's Cup. And that was like that was like the turning point of a lot of like club lacrosse players, process throughout their whole journey, because at that time, that was the biggest recruiting event. And all the coaches were there. They all had their convention, but they were all there for recruiting. When we went there, I don't remember if it was my first year going there or if it was my second, but when we did attend, I was kind of like giving up a little bit on like the recruiting process, because I was like, at this point, I don't really know where I'm going to look. And I hadn't found that school that I felt was right for me. And surprisingly enough, when the tournament ended and, me and my mom were in it was like Orlando or Tampa airport. When we were sitting there, like waiting for our flight, I was like, it might be a good idea. Check my email, see if any coaches had reached out, anyone knew, whatever. And when I did, I actually got an email from St. Leo's assistant coach. She reached out to me, said she saw me at the tournament. She was really interested in me, and that she wanted to set me up for a visit. Conveniently enough, I was literally leaving. But, I talked to my mom about it, and my mom was on board. That was the one trip that we didn't drive for. We ended up a few weeks later booking a flight. We came back, and that was like my official visit. So when I showed up for my official visit, it was early in the morning. I watched, the team at the time practice. Pulling into the campus, first of all, was like literally like a resort. And I was like, oh my God, I was in awe of it. And then, I met the team, stayed overnight and whatnot, had a tour with the coaches and all that. And, another week or so passes by and I'm home, and I got a call from our head coach, and, she was asking me, where my head was at. And, when I told her, I think this is a place for me, that was like the moment I knew, like, okay, this is it. Like, I want to go to school here. It's Florida. You can't really be upset in Florida. I don't know if I'm going to talk to my parents about it or my family about it, but I just knew that was the right fit for me. And so, I talked to the coach, and, within a few minutes, she had sent me an email with my scholarship and whatnot. And at that point, I had verbally committed. And then, a few months down the line, and ended up sending my my actual scholarship. And then, all in all, come down here. The first year, not gonna lie, it was actually very easy, and I was very surprised by that. Mainly because I think it was just like a new sense of freedom, and like being away from my family, and I felt like I almost had something to prove. Like, okay, I'm good on my own. Like, I don't need my family, whatever. But that's, I think, when the stress started settling in, and the anxiety of like, okay, like, you're a student athlete, like, you have two responsibilities to, work on your academics and, play lacrosse. And both of those contributed to a scholarship that's just hanging over your head. Like, you have to stay eligible. And I think those overwhelming responsibilities kind of build its toll up on like me, but like especially student athletes. But I know from my personal belief, like, over the years, yes, I have kind of gathered like a way to stay organized with like my thoughts and feelings about, okay, like, I have practice today and then I have class right after. I have homework tonight and I have a test tomorrow, like stuff like that. But I think no matter what, it's always going to cause some sort of anxiety in me, just because it's like I always feel like I have to be doing something. And if I'm not doing something, then that scholarship like just keeps like kind of like hanging over my head. But yeah, I feel like from my time here at St. Leo, that was definitely like the one thing that, those few things actually that kind of like had built up over time was like, okay, now that I'm settled in, the homesickness starts to come up, and, I do miss my family. Like, I missed events, I missed holidays and whatnot. On top of like just the stress of being a college student and a college student athlete, and just that anxiety of like pass fail, like all of that kind of like bundled up together. And I think it's kind of like caused me to behave in a way that's not typically me, that's like very easy going and whatnot. But yeah, I think that's for the most part what I wanted to discuss for today.
Yeah, I know you said how being a student athlete, you have like two priorities. You have to focus on academics and staying eligible to keep that scholarship for athletics. And I know you kept saying how all of it together was very stressful, and how you were the first one from your family to really go out of state for college. Did you have like a good support system behind you, and did they like frequently check up on you? You didn't feel like you were kind of like left on your own, which could cause more stress?
Yeah, so my family, like, when I told them I committed to St. Leo, of course, like, my mom was like a wreck, and my dad was just like kind of in shock, because like, you're young, like, I'm the youngest of the family, so like, I'm leaving, and I was the first one to leave. The support has always been there, and even now, like, from freshman year to senior year, they've always managed to pull off their surprises and, come visit me from time to time. Always checking in, like, whenever we would have games, they'd always be checking in. If they weren't here, they were watching them like live streams. So it was always nice from an athletic perspective. It was always nice to know that they were always literally like my number one fans, whether they were here or not. And academically, they've always been involved in like, okay, like, what classes did you have today? What's your schedule? How are your midterm grades looking? What's your final GPA for the semester? Stuff like that. But yeah, for the most part, yeah, they've been a pretty solid like support system for me.
Yeah, and I know you're talking about being very busy, having like a busy schedule and everything, but did you feel like you coped with your stress well? Did you have like techniques you used to like lower your anxiety when you felt, all right, I feel like I might not have someone like here for me right now just because I'm away from home and everything? Did you have like certain things that you did? Do you have like things to rely on that could make you feel better when you are down?
So freshman year, obviously, I think for a lot of like new college students, like, it takes a little bit of adjusting. And my freshman year, I was completely disorganized, and I think that was like a big contributor to like why I felt so overwhelmed and so stressed all the time. So yeah, that was definitely like the turning point because like my grades weren't where they were supposed to be. And you know, like I said, like that just stress of, you know, all these responsibilities, they just kept kind of weighing in on me. As the years kind of like went by, like, you know, our team would do study hall, you know, we do 6 hours a week or whatever it was. And that kind of, I mean, it did help, but it almost at times kind of felt like more of like a social like power or hour basically. But I feel like once I kind of got out of that like study hall groove, and when when you got good grades, you didn't have to do as many hours. I think I do better when I'm literally just on my own. Like when I finish classes, like whether it's in the morning or like later in the evening, I would come back. I always use a planner. I use a planner for everything in my life because it's just an easy way to stay organized. But I would use that planner and I would literally mark down like, okay, well, this is my class schedule. You know, when do I have time to, you know, do this? When do I have time to do that? Like, even if it was like marking down like when to do like laundry, it was just another thing to kind of get out of the way. But for academics, I always tended to keep my work till like later at night because like I do very well when it's just like silent. I'm in my room, you know, I have no distractions. And I always listen to music to kind of like settle my nerves a little bit because music was like always like kind of like a stress relief for me. But yeah, for the most part, I think throughout the years, I've definitely become more organized in my responsibilities from day to day, but like also in my thoughts as well. But yeah, I feel like that definitely has been the big turning point for me with just like the stress and anxiety of school and lacrosse.
I know you said you're very independent, so I feel like that's a huge factor in going away from home and not having family here, having to deal with like school, lacrosse, all of that. And I think it's good that you have options like study hall if you ever feel like you're falling behind academically. And then you could always have like meetings with your coach and a bunch of friends here. I think it's good that you came in having like 30 friends already on the team, which could like, for other people, it would give them social anxiety coming in, not knowing anybody. So I think that would help you a lot knowing, like having like a family-based setting when you came in. But I mean, anxiety is such a common thing. And I feel like over the years you have improved on it. So that's just going to help you in the future when you're really independent, like out of college, living by yourself, having a real job. But I think that's something that you have shown improvement on. And it looks like you're going in the right direction on that. Just like, honestly, like you said, like music helps like calm you down, stress relief, thinking of more tactics, such as like meditation could like be stress relief. Yoga, you said like you worked out. So those are common stress relief techniques you could use. And anxiety will just improve like along the way. But anything else you wanted to talk about?
No, I think I feel really good about our session. I feel like I was able to actually get a lot of like weight off of my shoulders of kind of like what's been building up throughout the years. So I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.